Welcome to the Leon County DEC Candidate Forum for Tallahassee County Commission District 5 election. My name is David Grimes. I'm from Key Largo and Homestead originally, but came to Tallahassee about 20 years ago and never managed to leave. I'm a member of the Democratic Club of North Florida, Legal Services in North Florida, a graduate of Tallahassee, Leadership Tallahassee Class 39, best class ever, although an employee of the Florida House of Representatives, although I'm certain that my opinions do not reflect those of my employer to the extent that they come out today. I am a civil rights and constitutional law attorney by trade, but work as the staff director in the House Democratic Office. I'm very excited to moderate this panel today. They say that local government are the leaders of tomorrow, but I can tell you from my view at the State House that they are the leaders of today. Whether it's at the state or national level, there are so many important issues that we're not able to get action on, and local government is stepping into that space to reflect our values. So it's so important for us to get to know our local elected officials and to give them a chance to get to know us. So I'm very excited to be moderating today. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. There are some thunderstorms in the forecast. So if for some reason our Zoom feed is lost or a candidate or myself loses their connection for an extended period, we'll bring everyone back together at a later date to finish up. We'll make this recording available in its entirety on the candidate forum on the Leon Dems Facebook page, as well as the Leon County Democratic Party YouTube channel. Fingers crossed we won't have any problems there. We have a fairly packed agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. As a reminder, let's keep the forum very cordial and respectful, and also respect the fact that we're on Zoom, so things are a little bit more awkward than they would be in person at times. The first up, we're going to have 2-minute introductory comments from the candidates. We'll go in alphabetical order. So first up will be Ms. DeBoles Johnson, followed by Mr. O'Keefe, and then Mr. Revell. Ms. Johnson, DeBoles Johnson, you have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, and thank you all very much for the opportunity. I am Paula DeBoles Johnson, originally from Orlando, Florida. I am a proud Democrat. I have been since I was able to register to vote at 18 in 1986. I have maintained my Democrat status since. I am also a resident of Indian Head Acres. That is my neighborhood and my neighbors. So hello, neighbors. I know quite a few of you all are watching, and thank you very much for the congratulations and good luck. I am married to the David Johnson, Captain David Johnson, retired, and we have 2 amazing daughters. We have spent our time here in Tallahassee since the late 1986. We went to FAMU, we met there. I always tell people that FAMU grew me. That is where I learned about advocacy, making sure that I stood up for the things that I believed in. And I learned about service at Florida A&M University. I am currently an employee of Leon County government. I am their employee engagement and performance manager. I've been here for about 5 years. In my prior experience, I've worked with a quasi-governmental agency, Volunteer Florida, where we have just done good through our AmeriCorps programs throughout the state of Florida. I've also worked with the Department of Children and Family Services, Department of Health, Disc Village, and Community Intervention Center. And I have a small nonprofit that's going to be 20 years old in another year, where I work with young people. So our family is known for its advocacy, and I am looking forward to the opportunity to take my experience in grants management, managing more than $15 million in budgets at any given time, my service through AmeriCorps, my service through many organizations here in Leon County, including the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, the DeBoles Johnson Foundation, our family foundation.
Ms. DeBoles Johnson, we're going to have to leave it there. The 2 minutes
Okay,
is up.
then. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Mr. O'Keefe, you're up next.
Excellent. Thank you so much for moderating, and thank you for all the people whose work put this together. I know now as a candidate, it is not easy to bring together Zoom like this in a way that is as interactive and live for people, so I appreciate it. I also especially appreciate being on Zoom because unfortunately I'm under the weather today, but I can still participate, which is another benefit of Zoom. I am David O'Keefe. I live with my wife and 3 rescue pets in Old Town. I have been in Tallahassee for 19 years. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, came here to go to FSU to study to be an accountant, where I have where I started my career in mostly government and nonprofit auditing, and then spent 15 years managing finance departments of varying size of different government foundations, direct support organizations, university departments, most recently WFSU, serving as their CFO, and much earlier before that, serving as a manager of finance and accounting, overseeing the Florida Prepaid College Trust Fund Plan. I have been a Democrat, a registered Democrat, 9 years of my voting life. I did a 12-month stint as an NPA, and admittedly, after turning 18, I registered Republican. And what I want to tell you is, as I got more into books of businesses, auditing them, and the books of how the money really works, I moved further and further left. And that's where I am today, partly by seeing how the real world works, not just necessarily the radio stations my dad listened to in the car. The reason I'm running is I think going to be laid out with a lot of the details and questions. The bottom line is I see a need here for a full-time dedicated public servant who is not part of an established political network, that has not served us well.
We're going to have to leave it there. I apologize for cutting off. I feel so bad that you all
No,
can't
you're good.
see me, so we can't do the non-verbal communication I'd normally do, but I've been informed to keep everybody on a strict 2-minute timer. So apologies for cutting you off. I'm sure we'll be able to pick that back up in a future question. Mr. Revell, it's now your turn.
Thank you, David, and great to once again be with David and Paula. This is starting to be a routine. You know, we're getting to know each other really well. It's awesome to be with all our local Democrats. I have been a proud Democrat since the day I turned 18, way back in 2005, and that's also when I made the huge journey to Tallahassee from nearby Havana, Florida, where I grew up. I came to Florida State. I was a political science student, had an opportunity to do an internship with the Leon County Commission and then Commissioner Daley's office, and actually turned that into my first full-time job, which was something I was very proud of. I had a wonderful opportunity to work there for 4 years while I went to graduate school at Florida State. And upon graduating with my master's degree, I got a chance to go and run the Tallahassee Downtown Improvement Authority. I did that for 3 years. And after that, I got to go and run public affairs at the Greater Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. And almost 2 years ago, I started my own business. We're a brand marketing firm called Revell Media. I hired my first employee this week, which is both nervous and exciting at the same time. But it's a great adventure. I've got 2 beautiful children, a wonderful wife at home in Woodland Drives neighborhood. My little boy actually turns 1 year old the day after the primary election. So that's always a good way to keep in check what matters most. But I've loved serving our community. It's been the real driving force of my entire career. I've been able to serve on multiple boards, still serve on many, including Goodwill Industries of the Big Bend, First T chapter here in Tallahassee. A lot of things. I've just had a wonderful opportunity to continue to give back to our community. It's what makes me want to get out of bed in the morning. And I hope to be able to bring all that to bear as your next Leon County Commissioner from District 5.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the candidates. As a reminder to our attendees, we're going to have some time to take audience questions at the end of the program. So for our viewers, whether on Facebook or otherwise, please type your questions as you can think of them. We will have co-hosts monitoring the questions as they come in. If you want to ask your question live at the end of today's event, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen and the reactions button. Push reactions and use the option to raise your hand. It should pop up. Co-hosts are going to prompt me and let me know who wants to ask their question live so that we can call on you and unmute you. And we'll get to as many of those questions as time permits. Now's the time when we're going to move on to the major Q&A portion of our program. So as a reminder to the candidates, you will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. I'll be keeping time and notify you when your time is up. Please do our best to stay within the time limits so we can be sure to get to those audience questions. It's okay to finish your comments under 2 minutes. Don't feel pressured to take the whole 2 minutes, but that is what we've allocated for each question. So we're going to begin alphabetically by first name and then rotate who goes from there. So our first topic today is going to be on violent crime. So we'll start with Mr. O'Keefe. As a result of the Leon County Sheriff's Office report on homicide in our community, The county commission's committed $70,000 to Sheriff McNeil's proposed Council on Men and Boys, an intergovernmental agency designed to research and propose solutions to our homicide problem, and to develop ways to intervene with young Black men identified as being most at risk of committing or being involved with violent crimes. So what do you think of the proposed council? If you're elected, what will you do to reduce violent crime in Leon County and improve intervention on the part of law enforcement with these young men?
We are, as a community, very fortunate to have that report, and not just from the sheriff, but everyone who's involved in putting that together, because they took the initiative to not just look at a reactive approach to increasing violent crime, but to dig into the details and to do the research and identify real long-term solutions to the problems that cause violent crime, to the ways we can go back to when someone is in their youth before they get put on what is often a path to violence or crime through circumstances not that a child or a teen should not have to be dealing with anyways, and to intervene with supportive services to keep that child on a path to a happy and healthy and violence-free life. I have basically used that report as instructions on what I think we should do for the most part. Going forward, I think we should be careful as more and more crime hits the news, that we don't take a punitive, increasingly carcerative approach when we already have a county detention facility that has to pay others to house our residents. And so I would continue to increase funding and support for that program and for the programs they develop, because that is where the benefit is, both for our people, for our community, and for our resources, as we know the financial impact from that report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Revell, we're going to have the same set of questions. So what do you think of the proposed council? If elected, what will you do to reduce violent crime in Leon County and improve intervention on the part of law enforcement for young at-risk men?
Thank you, David. And I think you're going to hear a lot of agreements on some of these big issues, in particular this one. I'm all in with what Sheriff McNeil is proposing. I think, he's the right leader at the right time for us to be able to try to combat some of these things. And I think his ability to try to reach out to people across our community, lean in and engage and help find pathways to hope for some of these young men is extremely important. There's no shortage of resources that we should be investing in this as a priority. I think a lot of this, the issues, the big challenges that we have in our community, when you think about it, these are the things we've got to make sure we're prioritizing as high as possible in our budget decisions, because, we have a lot of wonderful things here in our community, a lot of great things going on, but these big challenges, particularly when you think about violent crime, they deserve our full and utmost attention and the greatest resource that we can put forward to trying to really save these lives. I'm also a huge proponent of restorative justice programs and being able to issue civil citation programs that keep people from getting into the criminal justice system, because we all know once you get in, it's extremely hard to turn around. But again, I told you earlier, I'm on the board of directors for the Goodwill Industries of the Big Bend. This is the work we do. It's incredibly inspiring. It's one of my favorite things I've been able to do in my career, to serve there. And I think we can take some of those models that are working with organizations like Goodwill and other organizations across our community and try to bring them more resources so that more folks, more young people, especially young men, can find those pathways to hope that they need so badly.
Thank you. Ms. DeBoles Johnson, same set of questions. So what do you think of the proposed council? If elected, what will you do to reduce violent crime in Leon County and improve intervention on the part of law enforcement with these young men?
Well, I applaud Sheriff McNeil and the commission for being proactive and making sure that they have the data necessary to drive our budget decisions. We know it's a correlation between poverty and violent crime. So as my opponent mentioned, we do have to be very strategic about how we utilize those dollars. And the sheriff has provided a blueprint for us. And so for me, we've identified and we've known for years, this is part of my earlier work with juvenile justice and home-based counseling programs. Done this for more than 12 years working with young people and still doing so today through my nonprofit. And what we need to do not only as a county commissioner, if elected, but make sure that our community understands that our young people need mentors. We can throw money at this as much as we want, but we need people power. And it's also time to make sure that we're infusing more private public partnerships for community safety. Young people have already said that they want more activities in the community. They want places to go where they're safe, where they can hang out with their friends. They also need supportive services, more social services. And those are things that we can do as county commissioners if we have continued and strengthened partnerships. Again, there's money out there through the federal government. We have a lot of dynamic programs that are already in place. We need to shore them up and give them additional funding. Those are some of the things that are most important to me. Everyone that knows me knows that young people and women advocacy, that's where I live. And that's where we need to put our resources with these young people, but we also need people power. We need mentors in the school. We need people to help these young people out in the community. We need to give them a safe place to go.
Thank you. So that's going to bring us to our next topic, which is going to be growth management. And we'll start with Mr. Revell. You've previously said that you want to change how people think about growth in the community, and that while we love preserving our natural resources, that approach limits where growth can occur. And you have advanced the Chamber's 6 guiding principles, among which our regulations should be streamlined and reduced to facilitate business growth, and that tax and fee burden should be minimized on business. So if you could comment on those statements as you answer the next question, what grade would you give Leon County regarding land use and development projects that have occurred or been approved in like the last year, in terms of like an A to an F grade? And can you give us a specific example of a project and explain the reasons for your evaluation?
I think I would give it a C. And I'll go broad to start, and I'll try to narrow down, David, and I appreciate the question. First of all, to answer some of the comments you made leading in, I think one of the huge problems when we think about affordability in our community, and this is something that a lot of people might not think about because they might not have as many interactions with the development community, but when you're talking about having to go through extensive environmental process, extensive stormwater planning process for the entirety of projects when they get developed on the front end, not that those are bad things, right? I support those things, but you've got to be able to do it in a way that makes financial sense. That all of those costs always get sent back down to the people who are going to be buying those homes, okay? So that's very important to consider in this larger conversation. Going to projects that I think, would get a C at best. I live, I think all of us live kind of relatively close to each other, but I'm up and down that Magnolia Drive corridor quite a bit. I think about the project there that was the old Smith home on Park and Magnolia on the corner. There's now a variety of businesses. That is a project that was shaped greatly by the multimodal transportation district, which its intentions are really good. Its executions are pretty poor. That's a development that could have been a really great opportunity to have a new urbanist approach with very walkable internal street networks and greater connectivity. And we ended up with something that I think is largely unattractive, that doesn't really fit with the scale of who we want to be. Again, I think back again, we love our environment. We love our trails. We love our natural resources. We want to protect them. We want to make them shine. And every time a new development comes online, they're following our guidelines. They're following our laws. They usually turn out not all that attractive. There's a few developments that I really like. I think about the senior age limited project out on Mahan that's really well done. It's beautiful, it's walkable, it's unique. It kind of fits the character of who we want to be. But that's a developer who went way above and beyond what was required of them because they wanted to deliver a high quality project. And I think we need more codifying of that kind of values in our growth management process.
Thank you. So Mr. DeBoles-Johnson, same question. What grade would you give Leon County regarding land use and development projects that have occurred in the last 12 months on an A to F scale? And give us a specific example of a project to help explain your evaluation.
Well, I'm going to take mine in a little different direction, if I may. I would start with saying I would give a grade of a C. And I think that there's a lot of room to consider when we're talking about zoning or ordinances that can be reform through maybe careful assessment and reevaluation. I don't like to, I don't look at framing of zoning as good or bad. I don't think that's helpful to us. It's almost like asking, is a hammer good or bad? It's good if you want to pound a nail, but it's bad if you want to repair a watch, right? So we're talking about zoning and land use regulation in general. It's no different. They're tools. We need to be looking at zoning codes. And we have to think about the intent behind those codes. And some of these things are outdated. And I know that it takes time for us to kind of work through those process, but we have to be thoughtful in our process and kind of think about why these things were put into place in the first place. And if they no longer make sense for us, it's time for us to talk about changing these things and reform. So that is my answer. We need to be strategic, but we also need to be patient and coherent when we're talking about land use and how we will develop land. They're not making any more land. And people feel certain ways if you're talking about bringing different things into their communities. And what we found that is for those most affluent communities who understand how this process works, they get up, they advocate, they know how to do it, they know who to talk to. So things that they want in their community, they can get. But for some of our other communities where we may not be as educated about the process, we find things oftentimes come into our neighborhood that we don't want, we have had little say about. So I think that there's a couple of different approaches we need to take when we're
Ms.
talking
DeBoles Johnson, that our timer's expired, but if you could real quick, in like 10 seconds or less, when you were thinking through that answer, what project were you thinking of specifically?
I'm thinking about a project that didn't come to the South Side. So
Okay.
That's a hot button issue, and I'm just gonna kind of leave it there. And it is the police department. I think most people know that.
Okay, well, the chat is open for people to put in their questions at the end if we want to revisit that. So thank you very much. Mr. O'Keefe, same question. What grade would you give Leon County regarding land use and development projects that have occurred in the past 12 months on an A to F scale? And please talk to us about a specific project to explain the reason for your evaluation.
Yeah, I'll jump right in because this is a very specific question. So in the last 12 months, I'm going to give a C, but since we all did that, I'm going to give a C minus. And I want to talk about a development where a national developer that has done a lot of developing where I grew up most of my life in Jacksonville was looking to develop out in District 5. And at the June 14th joint comprehensive plan meeting between the city and county, it was brought up and discussed. And so I want to use this as an example of I am not anti-development. In fact, to meet my number one priority of affordable housing, both rental and ownership, we have to develop. But we have to understand whose incentives are driving the decisions and does it make sense? We always got to come back to does it make sense? So with this new development that is coming in or may be coming in, are the homes actually affordable? Or are they mostly over $300,000? Are we able to estimate and account for the impact on our communities nearby, on the environment, on the water supply and the stormwater drainage impact, and for example, on our fire department coverage? We haven't built a fire department out that way in a long time, and this is just one of many neighborhoods and developments that we do not, I think, proactively take those things into account. So let's keep in mind, these are not bad people. Let's remember whose job is what. A developer's job is to make the most money for their shareholders. An elected official's job is to protect our community and make sure our interests are met for our kids and our future generations in a way that we like. Let's remember, so this would not necessarily, we would expect this from any private business, that's their job, make most money for the shareholder. It's in law. Our job is you elect us to make sure that we work things out in the market and in our community and at the commission in a way that protects us and our future generations.
Thank you very much. So we're going to switch topics, kind of related to that last answer. We'll be talking about affordable housing now. And Ms. DeBoles Johnson, you'll be up first. So do you support the use of county funds to create housing for the homeless and to create affordable housing for those with low and moderate income? If you do, how do you spend the money? What constitutes like a legitimate and holistic public-private partnership? And what should other business incentives do in terms of building more affordable housing?
And that kind of piggybacks on my last answer. Yes, the county should certainly be involved in those discussions. We know at this point we have, I want to say, more than a little over 900,000 very low income households in Florida. And almost 50% of those folks, those folks pay more than 50% of their income on housing. So we're already in a crisis. And if we keep doing what we're doing, most of these folks are one paycheck away from homelessness. So we already have a cost burden renter system. Rents are going up. And we can't say that we're not going to participate in the process. So I'll say this, we do know that we have the Florida Housing Coalition. We have the Sadowski Fund. There are a lot of different opportunities for us to partner with organizations and use federal money to help with this housing crisis. We just have to be intentional about it. And all of us are pretty much saying the same thing. We see the crisis. We know it's looming. We fight about how to make sure that people who need things get what they need. And it's a simple process. You have to have the will to do it. You just have to have the will to do it. We've got enough people that can help us put processes in places to build things and get people sheltered and get people sheltered quickly. Again, we just have to have the will to do it. And we really need to change the definition of affordability. My husband and I have good jobs. We've educated ourselves. We've saved our money. And a house that's at $300,000 and $500,000 is out of our reach if we want to help anyone else in our family.
We're at the end of our timer.
Okay, he does that so well. I'm so sorry. Your time is up.
I wish we had all day. Y'all feel free to come by the Capitol and chat with me anytime.
I'm going to have to take you up on that.
So, Mr. O'Keefe, same set of questions. And also, since you kind of helped transition to this topic with respect to the last one, if you wanted to plug which project you were thinking of, that would be great as well. So do you support the use of county funds to create housing for the homeless and to create affordable housing for those with low and moderate income? If you do, how do you spend that money? What's a legitimate public-private partnership and a legitimate incentive when it comes to building affordable housing?
Yes, so to answer your question about using our resources to develop housing for the homeless and affordable housing, yes, 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 and yes. That is our role. We did not create this housing crisis. The people who do not have houses did not create it. Even for the size of it, the people at the commission did not create this. But unfortunately, we are not seeing the type of national response that is necessary. And so as local leaders, we have to be proactive and bold and creative in how we address it for the people in our community, because that's why we're running for this position, is because even if others aren't doing what we think they know they could be with their resources to help us at a different level, we're going to step in where we can. The project actually that I want to talk about is was run through the city, and so that's why I didn't get to talk about my last answer. Is Lafayette Gardens is income-based rental housing in District 5 behind Old Cabos next to the moon, and it is here's the thing. If you didn't live there, if you didn't live right next to it or go to meetings or be ready to run, for office or something, you might not even notice it, which is amazing because there's a wait list and it's very reasonable for the income brackets that qualify. It is gorgeous. It is near public transit, jobs, and grocery stores. That is an exact example. And the Affordable Housing Trust Company that did that, that's the type of thing we need to make easier to be done. And as far as specific public-private partnerships, I don't think it's in our best interest to start to go down specifically, have elected leaders picking outside private entities. That's how we get influencing and lobbying. We set up a bid, a proposal, an offer, a grant program, and let people independently apply and companies independently apply. I don't want to start tagging certain type of entities.
Thank you. So once again, we're going to transition to a related topic to that last answer. One that we've talked about quite a bit as a community, which is Doak Campbell Stadium. So
I don't think I got to go on that one, David.
Oh, did I skip you?
I don't want to get let off easy.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, I am sorry. We will not let you off. This
That's
is what
all right.
happens when I've got too many screens. So same set of questions. Do you support the use of county funds to create housing for the homeless and affordable housing for those with low and moderate income? If you do, how would you spend the money specifically? And what constitutes a legitimate public-private partnership and a legitimate business incentive when it comes to building affordable housing?
Yeah, short answer on all of that is yes. I do think we need to make a substantial investment in housing those who are less fortunate and living on the street. I think we need to go even further and start exploring how we can build a regional mental health facility, which our area desperately needs. Every time I have conversations with folks, but whether it be at the Kearney Center or the Big Bend Homeless Coalition or even our state attorney's office, they'll tell you that about a third of those who are experiencing homeless in our community are suffering from severe mental illness, and that's something that we've really got to bring onto ourselves and try to face and tackle that burden in a creative way. But I also think getting into more and more transitional housing is extremely important. Switching into more of just housing affordability, I think it's a real opportunity for us to try some things that haven't been tried before, right? I do think, the idea of having an RFP process where maybe we're even land banking, our county government can get creative, go and find some parcels, try to bring in developers through an RFP process that we can incentivize to do more and more projects. David's point about Lafayette Gardens, I live about 200 yards behind there. It's such a wonderful example in our community of what you can do when you're thinking creatively, when you're engaging people in public-private partnerships. I also think, there's some amazing people doing amazing things in this space all over our country. We don't have to be the ones who invent the wheel here. We need to bring best cases and best practices from all over America, bring them to Tallahassee and see if we can learn from their examples on how to make your community more affordable and more livable. One of my favorite things that I've enjoyed following for the last 10 years or so is a place that's affiliated with Auburn University. It's called the Rural Studio. And they go in and build $20,000 homes in rural communities outside of Auburn, but they're starting to export that way of thinking into other communities. And it's really innovative. Let's bring those folks into Tallahassee and have them help look at our community. Let's go to places like Salt Lake City, where they've done a really bold housing first initiative, and let's find out what worked, what didn't. How can we improve upon that thinking? I just think we've gotten into this baby step mentality in our community. We need to try some bold things. We need to throw the ball deep, if you will, and we certainly have to quit kicking the can down the road on these issues because they're too important to too many people.
Well, thank you for that answer. So sorry, everybody, for the false start on the Doak question, but we will transition to that now. So Mr. O'Keefe, you'll be first up. Do you believe that the $20 million blueprint grant to FSU for the football stadium is a good example of economic development for residents in District 5 and Leon County generally? How, if elected, would you move forward to obtain resources required for the unaddressed and unfunded needs of nonprofits and local businesses, given how Blueprint closed out?
Generally, no, it is not an example of economic development at all, because generally speaking, economic development develops new business activity, new permanent jobs in our community, and new goods and services in our community. And from the proposal from the university, Athletics and Foundation, it's very clear that this is to maintain or repair existing activity. That simply is clear cut. It's not development, it's repair of existing. So that's not where we should be spending that. And also, I don't think my opinion is a surprise to anybody who has a TV or subscribes to the Democrat or any of these forums. And the second part, how do we go forward about fixing the problems that money we needed for? We need to shift our focus, reform and rededicate our Office of OEV to focusing on local businesses that meet a gap in a good or service in our community. We have so many needs that are not being met in our neighborhoods, our communities. That is where our staff and economic development and the less than $1 million left in Blueprint should go to incubate, develop, expand local businesses that are not present, that are not meet, that we need a need met, because you get a benefit of, you get those same jobs you would have gotten elsewhere or wouldn't have gotten. They go to people in our community. The businesses match the community that they're being created in, and the equity in those businesses go to the people who are in that community. And that's the key. And we should have refocused that before we gave 27 million away. That should always be our focus in economic development. This is another example of, we can do what everyone else does and just recruit in big companies, or we can think forward and think, how can we do more than one thing with our money?
Thank you. Mr. Revell, same question. Do you believe that the $20 million Blueprint grant to FSU for the football stadium was a good example of economic development for the constituents in District 5 and Leon County generally? And how, if elected, do you move forward to get the resources that are unaddressed and unfunded in the community with respect to nonprofits and local businesses, given how that closed out?
Thanks for the question, David. I know I do not believe that this investment into Doak Campbell Stadium, or in any stadium for that matter, is an example of economic development. I certainly don't believe it's what those funds were intended to be used for. I think the worst thing that has happened in particular with this issue around stadium funding and using those economic development funds from Blueprint is that it's severely damaged the reputation of Blueprint. It's lessened how a lot of people in our community think of it. I'm a believer in Blueprint as a governmental structure. It has the ability to do really big things that our individual local governments might not have the ability to do on their own. It's where we've always been able to go above and beyond to do a variety of things. The Blueprint promise, when you think about it, was all about balancing our infrastructure needs and our environment needs. And we've done incredible things with those tax dollars over the last 20 plus years. But in this last election, or in 2014, when we approved this extension of Blueprint, we added a third promise, which was economic development. 12% of those dollars were to be used for those purposes. And they were a little broad, but there were very targeted places that were set forth when OEV was founded for how they want to spend that money. And stadium improvements for collegiate athletic facilities was never included in the conversation. I went to every single one of those citizen meetings throughout 2012 and 2013. It was never talked about, was never envisioned as part of what that fund should be used for. And I think it's going to cause us to miss out on various opportunities in the future. It's just not the right way to spend those dollars. I don't think they even really should have ever been brought up for discussion.
So we only have about 10 seconds left, but how do you move forward getting the resources that were left unaddressed that you would have liked to see that Blueprint money go to?
So again, those funds, and I think there's a lot of confusion that happens in the marketplace, those funds that were used for stadium improvements can only be used for economic development purposes. Again, and there's some broad, loose definitions about what that is. That's how we kind of got ourselves in trouble there. But those funds can't be used to solve certain problems that we think about, right? That's a very specific targeted fund that's supposed to go to economic development. I think they stretched too far that definition. Now, again, going back to the problems and your root of your question, I think we've got to make sure we're prioritizing solving our problems in our Leon County and City of Tallahassee budget that comes up every single year. We've got to make tough choices there.
Thank you. So Ms. DeBoles Johnson, you'll close us out with this topic. So do you believe the $20 million Blueprint grant to FSU was a good example of economic development for the constituents of District 5 in Leon County? And if elected, how do you now move forward to obtain the resources that are unaddressed that would have otherwise been funded, given how Blueprint closed out? Or I should say, could have otherwise been funded.
So no, I do not think that that was an appropriate use of those funds, especially when we have so many people in the community that were hurting. I would have loved to see more of that funding going towards helping women and minority-owned businesses. I would have liked to see some kind of organization helped to expand the work that we could have done in terms of rehabbing some of these older homes for older people that need repairs to their homes and for more affordable housing. There's a lot of different things we could have done, and we could have been more creative with that funding. I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can still have the conversations about private public sector coming together to make investments for the betterment of our community. Those are conversations I think that when we're elected to this office, those are some priority areas. People know me to be a person that's focused on people, right? And people need things. And right now, people are talking about the need for more support in their businesses. They're talking about the need for more businesses. They're talking about access to funding to help expand their business or even start a business. So again, I would go back to saying that that was not an appropriate use of our funds. We could have done a little bit better. And the last part of your question was?
How do we move forward, given the things we weren't able to fund?
We just do. We have no other choice. We have to be creative in the ways in which we're looking at getting paying for the things that we need, getting the things we need. And again, I think that is through public-private partnerships. And again, looking at those dollars that the federal government has issued to all of our counties. If we're creative with that funding and we get other people in the room, we can take care of the things that we need for this community, but we need community input. And the community has spoken, and that's one of the things that I hope people will not miss.
Thank you.
In this period, people have said what they want. I hope that they continue to be vocal to the people that they elect.
Thank you very much. So we're now going to switch topics, and we're going to talk a little bit about the perception of insider influence and conflicts of interest. So we'll start with Mr. Revell. You spoke a little bit about some of your leadership positions in your introduction with the Downtown Improvement Authority, the Chamber. You've been involved with the Capital Tiger Bay Club and the firm that you just started with your new employee you hired. You have a great deal of experience promoting economic growth and development for business and developers in Tallahassee and Leon County. Do you think developers and other business insiders have undue influence on local government at the expense of development and funding to benefit citizens, neighborhoods, and community resiliency, or is that something you would reject? And if elected, how do you address the perception that folks in the community may have regarding that kind of influence and conflict?
So a lot to tackle there, David. For starters, I think if people have a perception that there is undue influence happening in our community, then we have a problem, right? Perception is reality, period. And the line of work that I do now, right? I call it, brand management, brand marketing. Perception is reality. That's what I work with on clients. I think our community is in a very unique place. I think we've lost the plot on a lot of fronts. And one of those is the larger story of who we are. I think a lot about our bicentennial, which is coming up in 2024, both for the city and the county. We'll both turn 200 years old. It's an opportunity for us to have a huge reset with how we engage our community, with how we talk about our future, with how we solve problems. And I think that a big part of that needs to be addressed is that there's a large part of our population who feels that certain people get to play by different rules than everybody else. Now, here's a way that I would get you maybe to consider, again, why I think we need to open up everything from our comp plan to, again, what the vision is for the future of our community. Part of the problem is that our rules and regulation make it extremely difficult. If someone wanted to be what you would call an incremental developer, right? Someone who takes on a very small project and tries to go in and make change in their community. It's extremely expensive. It's extremely arduous. It's extremely time consuming. It is so difficult for your everyday member of our community to go and try to open a business, open a storefront, renovate a place that might bring in a new business that can be really effective on the community level. The reason that you see so many consultants and so many folks who have to be paid to help people move things through the process here is because our system is broken. It doesn't work very well. I can tell you again, we have a very unique situation here where both people on the private sector side, developers, whatever you want to, put into that big, bucket over here, and people are there, your everyday folks, your neighborhood advocates, they both agree that the system isn't working very well. I saw in the comments earlier.
That actually brings us over time, but if you want one sentence to conclude.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw a comment earlier. It was a question about our comp plan and the fact it's been amended over 1,000 times in 30 years. That's a huge red flag. Again, the results that we are seeing in our community are there because of the systems that we put in place, and we need to change those systems.
Thank you. So you'll be up next, Ms. DeBoles Johnson. So to go back to it, it was, what is your opinion of developers and other business insiders' influence with local government and the perception that that can be at the expense of funding to benefit citizens, neighborhoods, and community resiliency and stability? If you think there is a problem, how do you address that? What do you do about it, even if the problem is just perception?
And you can't disagree with what Jay just said. Perception is exactly reality. And people do not trust the decision makers, and that is a huge issue. And we need to be able to stand up without fear or favor to inappropriate political influence and interference with good government practices, even if your jobs are on the line. So people know me to be an ethical person. And again, I'm always people focused, but what's important to me is that I have a good name. That's what I have. People know that I will do what I say that I'm going to do. But there are some things that need to be fixed in our system, and things like what Jay just mentioned. And I've heard that when I've gone out and talked to these businesses, especially developers. And again, I have not taken their money, but I've had conversations because I want to know how we got here. And some of them say the same thing. It's difficult to get things done in Tallahassee, but this is what I know. Again, being strategic, inviting other people to the table and coming up with a new plan. Why not a concierge service like the larger city? If you want to come and do business in Tallahassee, we put you with one person who walks you through the entire process, from permitting to building to the ribbon cutting process. There is a way we can do this, but the old ways of doing business have to go out the door. But we can't be burdened with the same big dollar guys that are running Tallahassee and making all the decisions for us. We're never going to allow the new guys to come in and try to work with us if the older ones are always here and they're the ones with the influence. And you can look at our reports, our financial reports, to see who's giving us our talking points, who's making the decisions in Tallahassee. So you need to pay attention to the folks you're electing. We're funded by people who want us to do certain things for them. The community
that brings us to 2 minutes, but if you want one
and I
sentence
will
to conclude.
always advocate for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. O'Keefe, same question. So what is your opinion of developers and other business insiders and their influence on local government? Do you feel like that comes at the expense of funding to benefit citizens, neighborhoods, and community resiliency and stability? If you think there's a problem, even if that's perception, what do you do about
it? I'll try and take it in order. One, my opinion of developers and special interests is that they are people and institutions advocating for themselves to get decisions that benefit themselves as much as they can, and that's their incentive. Again, I'll make it very clear that your elected officials and your public officials who work in public government, their job is to protect you and represent you in your community. And so it's being clear who is who and whose incentives are what. This is where I will disagree with the other folks on the Zoom here, is that reality is reality, period. This is what happens when that money that goes to them absolutely leads to unmet needs, continued unmet needs. And so talk about reality. Reality is when people facing housing insecurity and who have experienced it, had their family homes go through foreclosure, and cars through repossession, they know what reality is, and it's not perception. And that is an important difference in why giveaways and influence are wrong. They're wrong for a lot of reasons, but the most important is because they use resources meant for people who need it.
Thank you. I kind of want to pivot to unpack some of the last couple of answers. And so we'll start with Mr. Revell. Can you tell us a little bit, paint a picture for us about donations to your campaign and potential election? What percentage is coming from businesses, developers, individuals, and other sources? And do those donations or your current employment, how do you explain to people whether or not that's a conflict of interest? And then we'll go Ms. DeBoles Johnson and Mr. O'Keefe, the same question.
I'll start with my current employment. I own my own business. I get the wonderful opportunity to work with great clients across a wide variety of things. You know, I work on things like building brands for wedding venues and websites for folks, and doing videos and all kinds of fun stuff along those lines. So I don't see anything in my business line that would be a conflict at this point, but I would certainly make sure that I either don't take on any clients that would be a conflict, or if one arises, we'll make sure that it's done so transparently and properly and in accordance with the law. I don't anticipate that, though. You know, as for donations, look, I'm very proud of the fact that we've raised almost $90,000 in this race. If you haven't looked at the entirety of the race, you know, there's only 3 candidates here today. There's 4 of us, though, that are on the ballot. And the other person that's on the ballot is a multimillionaire, well-funded, who's put over $30,000 of his own money in the campaign. And I can assure you that if he is the person that whoever might one of us squares up against in the fall, they're going to be extremely well-funded. And you're going to need a well-funded Democrat that can go and win that race. I think that, again, the fact that I've been able to raise money from everywhere, from my grandmother's bridge club to people who live on my street on Camellia Drive, all the way to people that have had, you know, previous engagements and relationships with me throughout my career, I think is a testament to the support that we have. It's broad. We have, again, folks of all walks of life that have contributed to our campaigns. And I'm very proud of everything we've done and everything that we're going to continue to do to work to win this race. I don't see any conflicts in anything that has been offered to me as a contribution to this point. And I will echo this to bring it full circle. I am my own person. I have my own opinions about the future of our community. I love listening to our neighbors. It's why I'm knocking on doors. It's why I'm making calls every single day, just like I know David and Paula are. I have formed my opinions on my own, and there's not a single political contribution that's ever going to change that.
Thank you. That does bring us to 2 minutes, but I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to address the second part. If you want to take about 10 seconds in terms of what percentage of your support is coming from businesses versus developers versus individuals, if you know that.
I really don't. I mean, I haven't worked that math, but I would tell you that the vast majority of our contributions are from individuals instead of businesses.
Thank you. So, Ms. DeBoles Johnson, same set of questions. Please give us kind of a picture of the donations to your campaign and potential elections. Where are those donations coming from in terms of businesses, developers, individuals, the community, or other sources? And do those donations or your current employment represent potential for perception of conflicts of interest?
So my campaign is fully funded. Again, people know this is a grassroots campaign. I know every single solitary person that has contributed to my campaign, and mostly small dollar donors. We have not taken any money from developers. And let me tell you why I haven't done that in this campaign. Number one is because of the earlier question. People have the perception that other people are making all of the decisions when it comes to how we move and make decisions in Tallahassee. And when I said that I would advocate for the people, I wanted the people to know that I would only take money from them because they are the ones that I'm supposed to be representing. That does not mean that we don't work with other groups, but I want them to understand that I will not be unduly influenced by taking their money, which is why we've made that decision. We have not raised $80,000+, but I have gotten money from people that I went to elementary school with, through people that have worked with me in other jobs, and a lot of folks that I've made connections with through my service across this country. And I'm very proud of that. The other part of your question was, did you say businesses?
Businesses, developers, and then individuals or other sources that you wanted to discuss. And we've got about 30 seconds left.
A handful of local businesses have contributed, but again, no developer money, and nobody, with the exception of individuals, have donated to our campaign. And thank you for all of our donors. We appreciate you.
Thank you. So Mr. O'Keefe, same set of questions. Can you give us a picture of the donations to your campaign and potential election? Roughly what percentages are from businesses, developers, individuals in the community, or other sources? And do those donations or your current employment represent the potential for perception of conflict of interest?
Thank you. 0% of my contributions are from developers or lobbyists or government relations firms. So far, 0% of my contributions are from businesses. That does not mean I don't believe in business, but a lot of our local businesses just don't go around getting into politics. Around Tallahassee, I think most people aren't stupid and know the people with the biggest amount of money get the most influence. And I don't think local businesses waste their money on small time political contributions. But that it makes an important point. Businesses don't waste their money. They're getting something for their money. I don't know of any business who just burns money. Now, so that moves 100% individuals and partially myself. The second question, well, then the continuing that, current employment and conflict of interest. Right now, I'm unemployed. This is my job, running for this office. I left, I resigned from being Chief Finance Officer for WFSU Public Media, effective February 1st or 2nd, to run for this office full time. And because this is what I want to do. This is the only thing I want to do. This is the only thing I will do should I be elected. I consider this a year-long job interview for the job I want most. So when I am elected, undue influence, even perception of it, I won't have any businesses, clients. I won't have any, no accounting clients, no tax returns, nothing like that. My job is serving full-time county commission. If I missed any other questions, please let me know.
I think you got it all. So we're going to go to our final proctored topic before we take audience questions, and that's going to be about poverty, homelessness, and mental illness. We kind of hit on some of it earlier, but I wanted to just bring them together in a question. And we'll start with Ms. DeBoles Johnson. So as a county commissioner, what would you propose to accomplish in order to address poverty, homelessness, mental health, and illness in our community?
So we already know that there's a direct correlation between crime and even some mental health issues. When we're talking about economic development, people need resources, they need money, they need good paying jobs, they need to be sheltered. In order to do this, you need to be able to have an income, right? So a lot of these issues that we see within our community can be addressed with economic development. I sit on a lot of boards, and a lot of our conversations are centered around the need for more mental health support. We have Appalachia and we have TMH, but we need more social workers. We need more licensed clinical mental health workers. We especially need them in the school. So one of the things that I would love to see us do is provide more support in terms of funding to all of these organizations in terms of more partnerships, right? I keep talking about public-private partnerships, more money to support these organizations that are already doing great things. We don't need to recreate the wheel. We have people doing these things. Give them additional funding so that they can expand their services. That'll take care of a lot of the issues that we're having here in our community. There was a second part to your question.
poverty, homelessness, mental health, and illness in the community, and what specifically you would do
Yeah,
aside
all
from
of
poverty.
that's wrapped up in that answer.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, Mr. O'Keefe, that brings you up. So, as a commissioner, what do you propose to accomplish to deal with poverty, homelessness, and mental health and illness in our community?
First, I want to do something I don't think we do enough. Is you talked about poverty, homelessness, mental health, and I believe you said crime?
Illness generally.
Illness generally, just medical illness. Yeah. I think one thing is these all interact. When we talk about dealing with them, I want to separate them because I just want it to be said that being in poverty does not mean you necessarily have a mental illness. Being homeless does not necessarily mean you have a mental illness. Having a mental illness does not necessarily mean that you are in poverty. And having a medical illness does not necessarily mean that. So we do need to be smart and see where an issue in one of those areas puts someone in danger of other areas. But I really just want to make clear that people may just have one problem with that, and we don't need, I'll just leave it with that. I wanted to start by just making it very clear those can be very separate issues, and I don't want to label altogether. That being said, there's no way I can talk about everything we need to do in 60 seconds. And I'll just say it will be all of the above. It will be putting money behind it, and it will be doing it in a way that is effective and helps the most people. And everything that I've already talked about and all the other questions kind of roll up to this issue. But we need to be clear that they're separate issues that impact each other, not one issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Revell, you will close us out on this category. So, as a commissioner, what would you propose to accomplish to deal with poverty, homelessness, and mental health and illness in our community?
David, I feel you. I think Paula would agree. It's really hard to answer these national problem questions in 60 seconds or less very often, but I think we've all done a good job trying. You know, let's start with poverty, right? You need careers. People need to feel that they have pathways to hope. They need to feel that they have a community around them that supports them, that there's programming there that gives people the chance to find the hand up, not necessarily the hand out, the hand up. That's what we talk about at Goodwill a lot. I think a lot about ways we can get creative with some of the resources that we already have. I think about our libraries and why or how we might be able to fund more financial literacy classes across our community and make sure that people understand when they're making financial decisions. Oftentimes, again, if you're talking about folks that are experiencing poverty, the repercussions of making a bad financial decision are 10 times worse for someone who's living on the edge than someone maybe who's more affluent. We need to make sure people understand good principled financial education. It's just extremely important that we make good decisions. And then the other thing, again, is job training, making sure, again, that everyone who maybe will not be bound for college. That's not a bad thing. You can become incredibly wealthy and prosperous without having a college degree. There's more pathways than ever to do that. And there's more need in our community and across the country for people who are really skilled and in various trades. So we've got to invest in that. You know, I'll come back on mental health. I have really spent a lot of time in recent years paying attention to those problems here. One of my clients is a large behavioral health provider. It just rips me apart that we have people that are living on the street without getting any kind of services. And, you know, my office is downtown. I live near downtown. I see a lot of these folks who are struggling with mental health on our streets, and it just breaks my heart. I think it's inhumane the way that we allow that to occur in our country, and certainly here in our community. I think we have an opportunity to invest in trying to change those outcomes, and it starts with a regional mental health facility.
Thank you. That brings us to the end, and we're going to move to audience questions and answers. So our first audience Q&A is going to come from Stephen Martin here on Zoom. So Mr. Martin, if you would like to unmute, you're going to have 1 minute, don't have to use the whole thing, in order to ask your question. And then we'll give the candidates 1 minute to respond thereafter. And we'll start with Mr. O'Keefe as first response in this line. So Mr. Martin, if you're ready to go, take it away.
Hey, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Leon County Comp Plan was adopted in 1990. That's about 30 years ago, to manage population growth. It's considered by many to be Leon County's constitution for land use. It's been amended 1,000+ times since its adoption, often at the request of the developers. Leon County's population has grown by 100,000 over the past 30 years, and it's expected to grow by at least another 100,000 over the next 25 to 30 years. So, is the comp plan adequately serving its purpose? And if not, why not? And what would be your solution to better manage growth?
Thank you very much. So, Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you for that question, Stephen. I actually think this is something we didn't get to talk about enough in some of our early questions. Is I don't think it is working. This is an example of something that has been effective, that I believe has been effective for part of its life, and may no longer be effective. And it is no longer effective in the way we need it to be. And so we either replace or make adjustments. We always do. We have a problem, we identify the problem, we go find where the solution is, we make the changes to get past the problem. And what I meant by this seems to have been working is Tallahassee and Leon County, especially if you stop a few years ago, if you think back to say 2012 or even 2013 and 14, before that complex was built across from the Winn-Dixie at Magnolia Ave. We have a unique character for the buildings and the homes and all of the neighborhoods we have in Tallahassee and Leon County in a way that most cities and counties in the United States do not have. It's why so many people like myself came here for college and stayed for the next 20 years and ideally for the rest of however my life is.
That exceeds the minute, but if you wanted to just use one sentence to conclude.
I think it did good. I like to think that's the reason that we've been in a good position, but we need to do what we can to make changes to stay in that position. We'll go back to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Revell.
If there's anybody who knows the realities of this question, it's Stephen Martin. I've seen Stephen in a lot of commission meetings over the year. He's a great neighbor on that front. He keeps a close eye on these things. And I agree. I mean, I think our comp plan is broken. I mean, first of all, so, I was born in 1987, right? So this thing's almost as old as me. And not to say that an old document can't always be a good one, but anything that you've got to amend that often and that contentiously, I think is not serving its purpose. I think we need a new vision. I think, David, I think we probably would echo here, not to pick up off of what you're saying, but I think it would be similar. I think we do a poor job of codifying the character of our community. I served for almost 2 years, and it kind of disbanded really when COVID started. We had a citizens working group looking at the land use and mobility elements. It was me and Pam Hall and a variety of other folks and from different backgrounds. And again, we all came to the same conclusion that we need to be able to set a bold vision for what the future of development in our community can look like. And we need to make sure that our codes are reflective of who we want to be. I think you see continuously, time and time again, every time a big new development comes up, most people walk away unhappy with how these things come about. And our plan,
our minute, but if you want just one sentence to conclude.
Thank you. Yeah, I think our plan contributes to the growing frustration that we all have as a community. And to Stephen's point, our community is on a trajectory to 500,000 people living here. We need a new vision and an updated plan to make sure that we can accommodate that in a way that is reflective of who we want to be and what we actually believe in.
Thank you. Ms. DeBoles Johnson?
The short answer is if we've had this many updates, that means that that document is not keeping up with what we need here in the 21st century. So again, there may have been honorable intentions when it was created. There was a reason for it. And we know some of it was segregation, residential neighborhoods by race and class. We know what's back there, but we need to talk about moving into the future. So we do need to be talking about reforming or revising that document and having different discussions again about what we want our community to look like. The document is no longer useful to us, so we need to revise it. That's the short answer.
Well, thank you very much. I neglected earlier that during this portion, if everybody wanted to go ahead and turn their video on so that all of our panelists and candidates were able to see all the people who showed up today to watch this debate, kind of turn the lights up, so to speak. That would be a great thing to do during this period of time. So our next question, second question, comes from Barbara Miller Donaldson. It's from Facebook. She would like to know how each of the candidates is going to stop, we'll just say the Republican, from blowing out the other three candidates with their funding by Trumpers like DeVoe Moore. So we'll switch up the order again, and we'll have Mr. Revell go first, followed by Mr. Bowles-Johnson, and then Mr. O'Keefe. So Mr. Revell, you have 1 minute.
Sure, I'll be blunt. You're going to have to raise a lot of money. You're going to have to work very hard. I think the way that the ballot dynamics work here, I think that our opponent on that side has a very strong chance of making it through this primary. And I think you're going to be up against a lot. This district is certainly, I think, more moderate than it probably has been in, election cycles past, because of the amount of growth that continues to happen on our east side. It just changes the dynamics. I've gotten people that have fed me text messages and all kinds of other things. He's out, telling everybody he's the conservative candidate, things of that nature, and that's fine. But he's well funded, and he's been able to put lots and lots of his own money into the campaign. And you're going to need somebody who can go and raise and match that. And right now, I'm the only one who's shown the ability to do that. Again, I think we've got some outstanding Democratic candidates in this race, but I think what we're up against on that side of the equation is going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of money, and the ability to build a really big base. And I think I have proven the ability to do that, and look forward to continuing to do that all the way through Election Day.
Thank you much. Mr. Bowles-Johnson?
So I'm going to disagree with Jay's statement. Some of us have the ability, but we've just been very strategic in who we've decided to take money from. So with that being said, I will say this. If you all want a Democrat, someone that's going to fight for you, that is going to listen to you, that's going to advocate for issues that are important to you, then we need your money. We need your support. We need you to be out there with us, phone banking, making calls, knocking on doors. And this is what I love about this. I've been preparing to do this for 12 years, and we have put money, our own personal money, into this race. But again, this is the people's race. And if the people want a specific candidate in office, the people need to come together to make sure that that candidate has a fighting chance. So again, I will say this. We have raised a little bit more than $35,000, but this has been a grassroots campaign. And again, we have been very careful about who we're taking money from. Again, perception of other people making decisions about how this county will be run, I didn't want that to overshadow my campaign. So I'm working for you.
That brings us at over a minute.
Okay, thank you.
One sentence to conclude.
I will say this. We need your help. If you want a Democrat in this race, no matter which one you choose, get out there and fight with us so that we'll have a fighting chance.
Thank you. And Mr. O'Keefe, 1 minute.
So this is where we get into making guesses about who's going to win. And I think if we've seen the last few presidential elections, we ought to be careful about thinking we know the future. But since you're asking me, I don't think our Republican opponent is going to make it through for a number of reasons that I will just be very candid with you on, that I may be very wrong on. This is one of the strongest Democratic districts in the county. The August primary, there is no Republican gubernatorial challenge on an August primary, but there's a very contentious Democratic gubernatorial primary to drive Democrats to the polls on August 23rd. So I think when people realize who this person is, this district is very unlikely to send this person to the general. Now, who gets to the general? It's going to be two people. One of them is going to be a Democrat or not. I'd like to think that I can be able to spend September through November preparing an office. But
that brings us to a minute.
Again,
if you want to conclude with one sentence.
No. Yes. About money, No one's going to let a Republican win this seat in the general. And if you keep doing the same thing you've been doing, you're going to keep getting the same thing you've been getting.
Thank you much. So that brings us to the end of our candidate questions. Unfortunately, we just don't quite have time to keep going. But if you'll scroll to the beginning of the chat, all of the candidates have been kind enough to put their contact information in the beginning of the chat, so you can get it there. We're going to close, again, rotating the order with a final question, which is, and we will start with Ms. DeBoles Johnson. So if you are elected to the county commission, what is the most important commitment you will make to residents of District 5 and Leon County? One sentence answer.
I would love to expand the amount of funding in the CHSP process.
Thank you much. Mr. O'Keefe, same question. If elected, what is the most important commitment you will make to residents of District 5 in Leon County in one sentence?
I will work full-time only for the residents, and you will not see one other dollar of income from any other source. I work for you.
And Mr. Revell, if you are elected to the county commission, what is the one most important commitment you will make to residents of District 5 in Leon County in one sentence?
I believe the time to tackle our biggest challenges is now. And if you elect me as your next Leon County Commissioner in District 5, I will work tirelessly to change the trajectory of our community for the better and for you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all three fantastic candidates for their participation, and thank you, the audience, for attending, and as well as the Democratic Executive Committee and all the other Democratic organizations that sponsored today's forum. Thank you so much for attending. This is the 6th Democratic Candidate Forum, 6 out of 9 in the summer series, and forums will be held every Saturday through August 13th for our important local elections as primary cycle. So we hope to see you for each and every one. Feel free to stick around for a couple of minutes. We'll have some important announcements roll. And again, thank you so much for being here today.